The Tax Compliance Manager tool from Indirect Tax is very easy to access. Go to Tax Manager and then click on Dashboard, and you'll be taken to the Tax Compliance Manager's dashboard. The dashboard is split into two different areas, one for transactional issues and the other for source data, such as supplier or customer setups, or even your own company information, such as your VAT registration numbers. We can scroll down and then find the detail of where the issues are. And then once we've opened that screen, we actually have a traffic light system. And on this traffic light system, we can actually say whether something has been looked at, whether it's been still has an issue against it, and we can actually go down to the detail of that particular issue to see who created it, when it was fixed, if at all, and how long it took to get fixed. So this gives us a lot more information as to identify how and where we need to give training to end users, or where we may need to improve our end tax solution. Another great feature of our Tax Compliance Manager tool is the ability to drill down to the actual transaction in question with just a click of a button. With this particular transaction, you'll be able to see that the tax amount should have been 50, but was actually entered into the system as 49. Usually the tax tolerance would have put this transaction on hold because it is more than the 0.1 tolerance. But the tax team can decide whether this rounding issue is significant or not to investigate. Before you drill down to the transaction, however, you should be able to check the important data, such as what the difference was, who created it, and when, and if it was updated by anyone. This is usually enough for the tax team to make a decision on whether to investigate the transaction further. Whilst the GL periods to choose from range from 1 to 3 months, you can click on the start date and change to go back to any period you like. This means you can get the last 7 years worth of data to check if that was what your requirement was. At the top here, we summarize by red, green or amber, and by clicking on one of these numbers we can filter the results below to only show those red transactions, for example. This makes it very easy to be able to follow up or do your work when you have lots of transactions to check. We can also click on the navigation menu and we can go to individual transactional errors. So in this particular case, we're looking at manually adjusted invoices. This is what we would normally consider one of the most important areas for the tax team to check, because this shows any transaction where a user has physically gone in and changed the tax. But likewise, we have many other transactional issues that we can check. We also have source data, and for example here we're clicking on those transactions, or sorry, those customers where the actual setup of the address is incorrect. So it's very important that we get the right emirate for our UAE customers, and here it is showing where we may have the wrong spelling for the emirate, or where there is no emirate set up at all. We can also check your suppliers, for example, to make sure they're set up correctly. This particular view shows those suppliers that are not correctly set up for tax, and it shows them by on a site level. This means we can quickly download this particular sheet, send it to our procurement team, and get them to update the suppliers before they become a problem. Transactional and source toolkit is to look for known issues based on our years of experience with implementing and analyzing indirect tax. But what if you just needed to do a deep dive analysis? Maybe to check for something that may or may not lead to an issue being found. Our analysis tool allows for just that. In this example, we can search for our tax overrides. The tax overrides are actually a special feature that Indirect Tax have built into their Oracle EB-Tax logic. One of the many reasons why our tax solutions far exceed the basic tax solution you may see with another solution. We can choose any date range and then choose the operating unit that we want to search across. And then all the transactions entered in the system where a user has manually added tax-related information will be identified. In this example, we can search on just a couple of operating units. At the top, you can see those tax overrides that users have used for these particular operating units over this period of time. Another great feature is that we can actually filter this data. So here, I can actually choose who entered the transaction. So I can choose the updated by, and then choose from the list of values that are linked to this data. We can see who entered it, what their values were, when they entered it, etc. Then we can go and actually download this straight to Excel. This is a very quick and easy way of getting the information out of your system that we can then, once opened in Excel, filter, remove any of the data that we may not want our target audience to see, and then easily go up to our file and then send this document to one of our team members. But our tool isn't just designed to check for errors. We also want to give the tax department the ability to see information. So just as an example here, we can quickly see those tax rates that are linked to Saudi Arabia. And then we can drill down and see the detail and see where the tax codes are. This is particularly useful if you wanted to check to see if someone has updated the tax rate in case there was a tax rate change. We can even look at a country such as Portugal that is far more complex and see the number of codes involved and all of the tax rates going back to the year 2000. But what about if we wanted to actually see why a particular transaction chose a certain type of tax? We can easily enter the transaction number and search for that transaction, and then this screen will show us what rules were actually activated, what the result was, and this helps us from a maintenance point of view in case we have any problems. But we also have the ability to go and check against our deep resource of user guides and videos. This particular video is going to show us how to enter a tax-only invoice.
This how-to guide will demonstrate, for example, when a supplier is invoicing you a tax amount. Additional lines. After entering the tax amount, we need to enter a default distribution. So find this on the invoice line.
We have found that with user guides, videos are often much easier to follow, and that's why we have an extensive library of the videos. But we also have the ability to actually enter categories or tax categories against our inventory items. So here I can choose a couple of countries, such as Bahrain and the United Arab Emirates. I can save those values, and I can actually then search for the items. So here I'm going to search for any item that has cable in it. I can then go through these particular items and then add them to our selection box as shown here. Once we've done this, as we go through, we can save our changes again, and now we can return to our page. This now allows us to actually add a tax category against those particular items. And note that these categories are unique to the different countries. So for example, if Bahrain only has the ability to have an exempt from VAT because there is no zero rated tax code, then we'd only see the exempt from VAT. Likewise, if we were doing this for a country like the United Kingdom, we would also see reduced rate as an override value. We can then click the update button, and a standard Oracle API will then go and update the inventory items and save the values. And here we can actually track the changes as well, what the previous value was and then what the new one is, to give you an audit trail. This was just a very, very high level overview of our tax solution, and it doesn't even touch the powerful tools that we have available to really do a deep dive analysis of the tax and the ability to be able to find issues within 10 seconds of a transaction being entered.